Yo, welcome back to a J Love video. Today we're here on this beautiful beach, and yeah, sitting on a little high sand dunes over here. But I'm here today with my amazing, awesome friend Brittany. And Brittany, will you just share a little bit who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Brittany. My friends call me B sometimes. I am a lot of things. I'm a mom to 2 boys and a wife. I love my husband Pablo. You can check out his video too. And I'm really into dancing, and I'm currently taking a break from my photography business because I've got 2 little boys at home and spending most of my time raising them. And my family moved to the Pismo Beach area a little over a year ago now. And when Jeremy asked me where I wanted to do this video, I was like, we have to do the beach. It'd be so wrong if we didn't do the beach.
Yeah. Awesome. So today we're going to talk about mental health, and yeah, I think it's something that's really good to discuss and talk. So yeah, Brittany, want to take it over?
Yeah. So by no means am I an expert as far as giving advice or telling people what we should or shouldn't do. But I just wanted to share from the perspective of I've had my own experiences with mental health, ups and downs over the years. And as a Christian, I think we're kind of catching up to healthy ways to cope with it, on the spiritual side and on the practical and the physical and the lifestyle side of things. And yeah, so a big picture as far as my mental health journey over the years is I didn't realize that I had anxiety as a kid for years until I got to college. It was like I left my home, I left my parents' house, I left all the comforts and familiarities, and I went to college, and it was a big campus, and it was really competitive. So everybody seemed smarter than me, and like they just knew everything that I didn't know, and it was just overwhelming in every way possible. And I didn't realize that I was just running on anxiety until midterms. And then I had a huge mental breakdown, had no idea what was going on. I was just crying and overwhelmed and had all of these feelings and all of these thoughts that I had never, like it was as if they just showed up that day, and I had no idea where they came from. And it took a lot of years of learning my patterns, learning my triggers, learning the things that really contributed to all of that pent up emotions. And then I could look back and be like, wow, like 8 years old, I remember being in first grade class crying over my coloring assignment because it wasn't perfect. And I'm sure at the time, my teacher probably thought I just really cared about this coloring page. But, the perfectionism, and there's so many things that kind of functionally tie into, what contributes to our emotions and what we feel. And then what we feel changes how we think. And there's just, there's so many things that go on. But fast forward to my most recent season, I just had my second baby earlier this year, and there's a lot every day in mom life, and there's a lot of little things, like thousands of little things all day, and that can really cause adding up and building up, and all of a sudden you feel the stress, or and even if there's nothing really serious or major going on in the day that goes wrong or whatnot, but as far as just sharing something that I just hope helps people is, we have the practical, so things like making sure you're getting enough sleep, or making sure you're getting out and getting sunshine, or spending time with people that you love. There's so many practical things that we can do, and lately the Lord has just really opened my eyes to how much we need to engage and come to His truth in order to use that as our starting point for the day, or our measuring stick for how things are going. And I think there's a lot of great intentions for advice when it comes to being a Christian and following Jesus, and also having mental health struggles, which there's a lot of things like, pray more, make sure you spend time in the Word every day. And those things are good, and you should do them. But I think there's so much more beneath the surface to that, which is I can read my Bible and still have a bad day with mental health, or a bad couple months, or a bad couple years. But earlier this year, the Lord really spoke to me about what I believe Do I believe what the Lord says about me? Do I believe what the Lord says about who he is? And when I spend the time to engage with that and really hold on to that, and find the parts and pieces of me that don't believe, because that'll come up too during the day. And it's not like you think about it that way, like, oh, I don't believe that God really loves me the way he says he does. Your brain doesn't think those kind of thoughts, because if they did, it would be easy and obvious. And you could be like, oh, hey, I'm going to come to my friend Jeremy, like, I need prayer because I just had this thought, and it would be easier to kind of deal with those things. But I've just found lately that there's a lot more work to be done to really uncover the things that we think or believe or feel that then make us think or believe or feel other things that don't line up with who God is.
Yeah.
And I've also found that if I'm not regularly doing the work to check in and to kind of like keep things in line with God and with what his word says and who I know him to be, is that it's just a slow fade and you don't even really realize it. And then all of a sudden you have a emotional breakdown of some kind, or something goes terribly wrong because you've just been off for so long. But is to uncover those things and really dwell on the truths. Like, I know that I love God. I know that I believe in God. I know that God loves me. And sometimes those things, we hear them too often and they kind of lose their power. They lose their, we don't feel it in our hearts and we don't believe it to our core. And that's where we need to really just slow down and come back to God and spending time with God. And gosh, that is so hard as a mom sometimes to find that time.
So awesome. Wow. So what is the deepest struggle you had to go through? Because I feel like a lot of people have more of a darkness in their mental health. And I know people have struggled with depression, suicide, all that. So has that been something that maybe you've gone through, or what can you share to help these people come out of that?
Yeah. So I've had different seasons. Going back to college, that was so overwhelming on every, side possible. And I didn't realize at the time that, well, basically, so I felt like I had really deep faith in the shallow end. And all of a sudden my faith got challenged to the point where I didn't know if God was real. And it didn't cause me in that season didn't cause me to go into depression. I've had other seasons where I did. But as far as like getting into like the depths of whatever it is, and if it's a family dynamic, or if it's a job loss, or if it's an identity thing. Identity has been a really big thing for me in like more recent seasons. And maybe I should speak to that because that's just a little bit more fresh. But so often we don't realize what God is pulling us out of or walking us into as far as freedom goes, but we just feel this struggle. And so if you're experiencing depression to the point of it's hard to get out of bed in the morning, or you're not really eating right or enough or at all, those kind of things, those symptoms are screaming at you to find whatever the source is, like what is causing that. I went through some pretty dark stuff as far as I just had this vision or idea in my mind of what I was capable of and what my life would look like as far as photography goes. I have a photography business, and I didn't realize at the time, when I was depressed and struggling with anxiety and I was just stressed all the time, that my identity was wrapped up in whether or not I could make it work. If I could be successful. And that idea of success was very worldly, very, very worldly. Did I have enough clients? Was I making a certain amount of money? Did I have a certain amount of likes on my social media content and posts and things like that? And I honestly didn't even get very far towards, publishing blogs and having a bunch of Instagram posts or things like that. I didn't even get there because I was so in the thick of the mental health stuff, of worrying about if I would get enough likes. I didn't even post them because I was so worried about what people would think of me and all these different things. So I don't know if I'm answering your question about just like some of like the deeper and the darker side of things. I think because in large part, because I'm on the other side, and the Lord is bringing me into freedom about so much of it. But yeah, I do want to say that if you've heard somebody say that Jesus is with you and that Jesus can bring you through these things, and if you're thinking, oh gosh, that just sounds like, they're there, you'll be okay. It's not. It is so true. And if it feels really superficial, or if it feels like Jesus is not enough to bring you through even the deepest and the darkest, challenge yourself that you're not believing in the power of Jesus when you think that. And it's easy, like people have told me things like, you just need to believe more, you just need this, and it just sounds so too easy. And nobody really talks about the work that it takes. So go deeper, spend time with God, get in that uncomfortable, stay in that uncomfortable long enough that God can speak to you, that God can reveal things to you, that God can renew your minds, and really engage with God on all the little parts and pieces, so that he can renew you, he can give you new thoughts, better thoughts, because that's a lot of the identity stuff of like, well, what happens if I fail? What are people going to think of me if my photography business fails? What are people going to think of me if I post a bad image? And it's so funny that I say these things out loud. I'm like, wow, these doesn't sound like a big deal at all. Like, these are really small things, but they're not. They were consuming. They were so consuming, to the point where I wasn't spending time with God. I wasn't reading my Bible. I wasn't catching my breath. I'm like clenching my mouth, holding my breath, just trying to come up with something out of nothing. And it wears on you.
So, it's crazy. I'm going to go back a little bit in your story. It's like, I think when you say, like, when you wake up, get out of bed, it's like, I feel like the times where people wake up and they get like on their phone, they like look at their phone right away, they do all that. It's like, I think that could be really like starting to get depressing, because you're like, oh, what the heck's happening now? But instead of waking up saying, you know what, I need to get ready, I need to pray, I need to worship the Lord, I need to do this, so that could go move forward and all that, And that's something I got to deal with, because I'm like, dang, I got to do that sometimes, like, instead of like just looking at stuff. But
that's huge for sure.
Huge.
I think waking up and looking at your phone for anything, and it could seem so harmless, right? Like, oh, I'm going to check my text message. I was texting my mom last night. I'm going to see if she replied this morning. It can be so simple, and something with mental health and the spiritual, right? Like, there's such an overlap, and I don't think we give it enough credit to recognize how spiritual our mental health is, or not how spiritual, but how much the spiritual is involved. But when you wake up on your phone, you're seeing other people's lives, you're hearing other people's opinions or voices, and drama, or maybe you're dating somebody and they didn't text you back last night, and you wake up and and it could be good relationship dynamics. It could be you might have people in your life that are not good to be in your life, but like whatever it is, when you wake up, those first minutes, that first half hour, that first hour, whatever you find works for you. But like our minds are battlegrounds. And it's there's so much about the mind that if we give it first to God, it really is different. And it's something that I'm working on, especially with mom life. Like, I wake up and my babies are awake and it's time to change diapers and get dressed and get breakfast going and things like that. So I don't say some of these things because I've figured it out, I've arrived. That just is not the case. that doesn't really exist. But yeah, especially if you are opening social media and looking at people's best moments or their selective moments, and then I mean it can start comparison, and I feel like all of this stuff is all really relatable things, but it can go darker and deeper so fast, depending on where you're at. And if you're currently in a funk of depression or anxiety, or even in just like a really hard season, you know, somebody passed away recently in your life, or your job is terrible, or maybe you've been waiting on God for like years, you know, for a big change. I feel like any of those kind of things make us vulnerable if we're not engaging with what God says about how faithful he is and how good it is to wait, and, you know, wisdom versus, you know, instant satisfaction, things like that. But yeah, getting up, starting your day on your phone is not a good idea.
Yeah, because I really feel like that's more depressing than doing anything else.
It really is depressing.
Yeah,
even if you're not currently depressed and you wake up and you see something on your phone, it could give you a feeling of depression, you know, of just feeling low, like of some kind so quickly.
Yeah.
And then you start your day off that way.
Totally.
And then you have to fight it all day to get back to a good place.
Yeah, totally.
And find the
Lord. I know you spoke on this. So from mental health to Christianity, how did you like know that God could be like the main center of your life when you're going through that? Because I think people have a hard time understanding that, how you're going through all this, but here's Jesus. So how did you transform from that to Jesus, and you knew that Jesus was gonna release all that? I think that's what people struggle with.
You know, I think you hit the nail on the head. Because, yeah, thank you for that, because that really gets to kind of the heart of, like I mentioned earlier, of like, you know, sometimes you hear people say things and they're trying to be encouraging, but really they just want to make you feel better, and they're not necessarily coming from a place of understanding or experience to where they can actually help you figure it out. So as far as like what to do and how to go about it, or, you know, how do you connect to Jesus when you're in the middle of something that just pulls you down? But so to answer your question, really, like, is I just had to figure it out. There was a lot of trial and error. There was a lot of things that didn't work. Actually, this morning, funny, God's timing, no such thing as coincidence. But this morning I remember just being at a low point. I was just not in a good space. I was emotional, and I just went for a walk, and I just needed to cry, and I didn't even know why. That happened a lot in those seasons of depression or anxiety, where it was so high and so like lasting, that you're just kind of emotional about everything. You don't really have specific things. It's not like you watch a sad movie so you cry. But I just went on this walk, and I just remember telling God how mad I was at him, because I found it too hard to sit still enough or get quiet enough to hear from the Lord. And that's all I wanted when I was depressed or anxious, was I just wanted to hear his voice. I just wanted to hear something from him. And yeah, there was a lot of trial and error, but and that was a while ago, that, as far as that story goes. And most recently, I just want to share this because it's been so practical for me, is for me to declare what I know of God. And then I'm experiencing Jesus, and then I'm getting to, okay, I'm not here anymore. I'm over here. Yeah. This is Jesus right here, you know. But it's like, you know, I think when you're in the middle of any mental health issues, is that you get really preoccupied and really self-centered, in the sense that you're here, you're in your head or you're in your feelings, and Jesus is here saying, come here, come over here, get out of here, get out of, you know, you need to come out. And because Jesus is with us, but when you're in that mental health stuff, like, you're in the mental health stuff, you're not focusing or engaging with God outside of yourself, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, when I declare, when I start to profess, when I am actively engaging, I keep using that word engaging, but like, yeah, speaking the truth and then believing it, and working on that. If you're saying something about Jesus, like, Jesus is with me, or you know, with some of the identity stuff or some of the like fear of failure and what are people going to think of me and stuff is that God approves of me no matter what I do, no matter how well I showed up to be a mom today, no matter those things, and recognizing that I can't lose his grace. I can't lose his favor. I can't lose his love. And so learning to kind of pair those things, catching your thoughts, recognizing what you're thinking, and then yeah, countering it with truth that you know. And if you don't know, like, that's something too, is that you got to start somewhere. Yeah. So if you don't know what Jesus is like, if you don't know what is of God that is going to counter the lies that are going on in your head, then you got to start with scripture. Just start turning pages, read Psalms, read the Proverbs, read the Gospels. It doesn't matter if you understand everything or if you understand nothing. Like, just start. You just need enough to where you have something to work with.
Yeah, that's so good. Oh man, so powerful. Yeah. Before closing out, there, I know you've done a lot, but is there anything like you really want to profound and closing statement, like, to where these people will really understand the heart of it?
Yeah. There's a couple things when it comes to anxiety, depression, suicidal, anything, is just because you think it doesn't make it true. And just because your mind, as far as like if your thoughts are going in a certain direction, you don't have to go with it. And once you can recognize that or learn that for yourself, and again, on that, like, you have to learn these things for yourself. And I hope it's encouraging. I hope it is, gives people some ideas, or like, whoa, I never thought about it that way. But take it and run with it. Keep going in the same direction long enough to find that freedom with Jesus. I think sometimes we get discouraged so easily, just in general as being humans. But when you're going through any kind of mental health challenges or just really heavy, dark anything, is that it takes so much more energy to pursue what's good. But the light will always overcome the darkness. You just have to keep at it long enough to give it a chance. And I remember in some of my darker days, just wanting the instant, right? Just wanting, I can't tell you how many times I prayed, like, Lord, just take this away today. Like, I'm so done with this. I'm so tired of being stuck in this. I'm so tired of, I would wake up and my mind would just, and it was not, I didn't like being there. It wasn't a good place to be. And it made it worse. Like, the first hour waking up was always the hardest when I was feeling depressed. And if you can cut that off, if you can do something to just stop engaging with the thing that's taking you in the direction you don't want to go. But you can do it. And God is going to be the one that gives you strength and gives you resiliency and gives you what you need to do it again tomorrow. And the more you can trust God for what you need, despite your best efforts, like, you want to be able to be the one that fixes it. And you do need to put in the work, but the Lord, like, trust that God is with you in that. Like, he's the one feeling it. He's the one guiding you in the right direction, and just keep going. Because his mercies are new every morning. And that means tomorrow, again and again, new mercies.
Thank you again. So good. Wow. You guys, it's an amazing video. Till next time, Brittany, J-Lib, we're out.